Hey everybody, welcome back to the Check Engine Podcast. We're still the only podcast produced by 3 winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award. My name is Nick, and I'm here with Andrew and Tristan. We actually haven't got up and left from our last episode because we're getting right into part 2 of our show and tell.
That's right. We're still on one from before, so we're ready to just go right back in. We did mean to cover 3 separate topics last time. We didn't get that far because
we stumbled upon a very interesting topic.
We
courtesy
did.
of
We got a little carried away. I'm gonna put this magazine away now.
yeah, just in
I
case.
was looking at that.
Don't want to do any more damage.
Get out of here, Road and Track. Just kidding. We love Road and Track.
So in the time that no one even had a chance to look out the window, does anyone have any new car news?
No, the shades.
car news?
The shades closed here. I can't see anything outside.
Oh, well, I could relay my story that happened commuting on my way to work the other day, where I was almost owed a very large amount of money and certain favors from Elon Musk because his technology almost killed me.
That's right. Yeah.
I was commuting to work on a local, what would they call it overseas?
Road.
Like dual carriageway.
Just say road. Just say road, man.
And
no, there is an actual term for it.
boulevard.
Yeah. Boulevard. Thank you.
Where it's got 2 lanes going each direction. And I was driving down the road, and what to my wondering eye should appear, but nearly in my passenger door, a Tesla Model X. Now, bear in mind, this is the vehicle that, according to old Uncle Elon, cannot hit anybody.
Actually, let's pause. He has gone right fucking insane in just the past couple days.
Oh yeah.
Has anyone checked on him? Just brought him a glass of apple juice and been like,
Warm milk.
let's take it down. It's gonna be okay. So he needs to chill.
Yeah.
What do you?
Well, he heard about what happened to me. That's why.
He knew you were coming for him.
Yeah. No, because, I was nearly T-boned by a Model X. And only through...
But you weren't.
Well, but like I said, I cannot help but think that was not much at all to do with the Model X.
Because it definitely didn't auto-brake.
No, because it was definitely not braking. I may have flat-spotted my tires and bent my brake pedal. I was to the floor, right through the pedal. The pedal was down, and my foot just continued through it and tried to put a hole in the floor. Because I was stopping as fast as I think I may have ever tried to stop a vehicle. I was, in my mind, I was telling you guys, I was not in crash avoidance mode. In my mind, it was inevitable. I was in damage reduction mode. Mm-hmm. And the Tesla did not avoid me by braking. It avoided me by the person driving it swerving.
Yeah.
I don't think its systems had anything to do with that.
Definitely not.
So, that was what happened to me. That was my, neat car news. So
I don't know how neat that was.
Neatly nearly ended up in my passenger seat. But that does segue neatly into what Andrew wants to talk about is, the ever spiraling Elon Musk.
A little bit. I mean, I just... so we're recording this on a Thursday here. What's happened this week? Oh, he said that he was going to take Tesla private at 420, which is either a weed reference or a reference to Hitler's birthday. Remember, Elon Musk comes from South Africa, so that's a little troublesome. Is that too much? Is that too much there?
No comment.
I say nothing.
But, and that is actually gray legal area because he's the owner.
So, for example, he says he's going to take it private. If he then does not plan to actually do that...
He has to suspend the stock.
Well, the stock was already suspended.
Oh.
But the problem is, even because they were waiting to see how that shook up, before it got suspended, it went up 6%.
Wow.
And it has since slid back down because everyone's like, oh yeah, how is he actually going to do that?
Right.
But if he manipulates the stock price upwards or downwards, that is illegal.
Yes.
And that's the question is, if he does end up taking it private, and it has no bearing on a publicly traded company anymore, it's not illegal. But there are lots of questions about that have yet to be answered. So, Nick is still holding his microphone. If you guys are hearing anything weird, it's because he keeps using it as a, I don't know,
Beard brush?
head scratcher, beard brush.
Yeah.
I'm on hashtag team put it down, but because I can see your beard in your microphone signal. So, but anyway, that's why I keep getting distracted because I'm waving at him. I can hear your microphone, but I can see your microphone.
I can see it too. It's right here.
But I think it's something that we have to watch carefully.
I think
health check. Who's in or out on Tesla?
I'm out.
Out.
what is bigger than out? Elon Musk is a man
Back in again, the other side.
I'm actually so out that I'm super in on Tesla. What I was going to say is that Elon Musk is a man who defies superlatives because he's beyond fuckboy and he does beyond fuck shit all the time.
Yep.
There's just not vocab to describe the level at which he bought his hairline, the level at which he is kind of a dick, and the level at which he is so unbelievably petulant. Like, what I was going to say is he wants to take his ball and go home. That's not accurate, strictly speaking. He doesn't want to take his ball and go home. He's so personally injured by not even negative coverage, by media neutral coverage, that he would rather risk imprisonment, because, by the way, if you manipulate your stock, it's not like small prison time. It's big prison time and big fines. They really don't want you doing that.
Yeah.
So he'd rather risk that to tweet something before he's had a morning piss than he would get the fuck off Twitter and get a hobby. Like, is Jeff Bezos on Twitter?
No, he's got stuff to do. He's running Amazon.
Yeah.
He's
Bill
got a
Gates on
wife.
Twitter? Exactly. Does Bill Gates?
He's
get
running
up
a
in the
real
morning?
company that does real things, not just
Although
take people's money
does
and
not make a real
stuff.
profit.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
Whole different macroeconomic story.
Can't he get a hobby? Can't he take up Skittles eating or canoeing or maybe building?
Rhythmic canoeing. You guys have seen the video. It's great.
I just don't. How can you have as much money as Elon Musk and still have unlimited amounts of free time with which to do the same thing college students do?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who do that.
Well, if he makes
I mean-
that much money, I'm sure he's got a lot of people that do stuff for him.
I mean, I don't want to get too political, but leader of the free world also has time to do that.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
So it's
They're the same guy,
The
so.
job, the job itself shouldn't give you enough time to do that, but they managed to let it happen. So
Also, it could be a quick plug for Twitter. It doesn't take that long.
Twitter, you can do it on the can.
Twitter,
That's right.
destroy your life in just 10 seconds.
I mean, you know, whatever. He's rich enough and white enough. Elon Musk has infinite lives. He's playing with basically house money. He doesn't care. That's all fine. It is what it is. But the thing that annoys me is that after starting this podcast, I started the Check Engine Podcast Twitter at Check Engine Pod. Follow us. And my timeline was blissfully free of Donald Trump. It was blissfully free of idiot Twitter stuff. And there were just these occasional mentions of Elon Musk when he would do dumb stuff and we could all laugh. Haha, isn't it funny? He's such a clown. But he's now made it where 95% of my timeline is stuff about Elon Musk. I don't want this. I don't want to hear it.
I didn't ask for it. I don't want it. I wish it would stop.
I really do. That's just the point I'm at. And it's like people who are in the industry, who cover cars for a living, one guy gave a quick, he's like, I drove the new Model 3, fit and finish interior B+, performance B+. Those are good grades.
I got that in my last English class.
And he just
It's
got
fine.
hammered for it. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, man.
This wasn't even what we were going to talk
Yeah,
about.
what the
as
hell?
this
This was We are completely off the rails. Andrew, didn't you have another topic for show and tell?
No, it's
I
fine.
do.
Like I said, I was planning on fitting mine into the last quarter of an episode that should have been thirds. So mine's short. We'll be okay.
I got some stuff that happened. Here's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about something else that makes me mad. Wow.
That could be the new name of our podcast. Stuff that makes Andrew
things
mad.
what make Andrew mad. It could be.
We all get pretty fired up though.
At the start of our blog, I did one about the Bullet Mustang. Was that the first ever one? First ever blog?
No. It was cars. Something about like your car you
Oh, that's
owned,
right, that's right.
Saturn, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the Hyundai, the Jack of all
Hyundai,
trades.
Jack of all trades.
That's
yeah.
right.
This is the second one I wrote about how Ford needs to stop making the Bullet Mustang. Shortly after that, Ford announced that they were axing their entire car line,
Except for the Bullet Mustang.
except for the Bullet Mustang. Except for the Bullet Mustang, which is getting rave reviews, by the way. I see that on my Twitter too. I don't want to hear that. but no, okay. So
Okay.
to get back on topic, the next blog I did was about the trend chasing, the negative things that happen when people in the auto industry do what they're doing now, which is trend chasing anything. So it's happened with SUVs, and now we're at SUVs again, to the point where Ford is actually they want to get rid of all the cars they possibly can. So Ford has stuck to this idea. They announced it in May, I think it was.
Yeah,
April or May.
Yeah.
You'll find it on our episode, the emergency brake.
Yeah, the emergency brake,
Hey,
right, on Ford.
this is happening.
Their stock went up, maybe like a single digit percent. I want to say 5-7%, something like that. And it has been in decline since. But Ford, sticking to their guns, sticking to this plan, they actually are so determined to get rid of cars and only produce sedans. Oh, God. To get rid of cars and only produce, let's just call them SUVs, that they have now officially announced, and I don't know what meeting this was, I just saw it on Twitter, their, let me find this guy's title. Executive Vice President, Product Development and Purchasing, Ford Motor Company. Hao Tai Tang is his name.
Okay.
So he announced their future plan. They're going to go down to 5 total platforms. They want to go to 5 total platforms across the globe, which is sensible.
Okay.
It's a pretty good idea for a car company to use just 5 unibody platforms to build everything on. It makes your production costs cheaper.
Look at the Volkswagen Group. It's basically all MQB.
Right. It's a really good idea. So this chart, we'll have to post this up. It lists the 5 platforms, and it has 4 price dividers. And they don't give a numerical range, because obviously it would change. So they have $1 sign, $2 signs, 3 and 4. All of these vehicles, with the exception of 1.5, literally it's on the line, are in the 2 or above. According to this plan, Ford very much wants to move to a
Luxury
production cycle where all of their cars across all brands in the world, they do not make a single car that's cheap. That's what they're saying here.
Branding, it's they don't make any inexpensive cars.
Oh, God.
Right. It's branding. They're branding themselves as
Yeah.
a luxury high-end brand.
And unmentioned is that one that kind of straddles the line
Right, yes.
is in fact
There was something. There's another thing at the bottom in gray. So they have their 5 platforms, and they have one that's labeled JVs/alliances. We discovered that
joint ventures.
means joint ventures. So there is one SUV silhouette that crosses over into the $1 sign range and goes into the $2 sign range. And I wish I had a better way to describe it, but I just don't. So what Ford wants to do is make all of their vehicles very high profit, very low effort. And the way they're hiding that, the way they're attempting to conceal that from the consumer, is to say, we're getting rid of cars because you don't want cars. You're a consumer, you don't want a car. You want an SUV. I think this is appalling. And I think they're wrong.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, verge into repeating ourselves in behind the scenes content on what we think of this, but I think because we've already discussed, like, okay, what if Ford is doing this? How would we feel? I think the biggest thing to take away here is that they are. it's not like, because kind of the wording was vague. It's like we're looking for profit margins, we're looking for this, but now it has become clear in a diagram produced by Ford, basically saying
A graphical visual
yes,
sense.
we are after your money, and that's it.
That's what kills me about this.
And-
They made this diagram.
Right. I mean, I would like, as a car person, and it's kind of a preview of what I like to talk about. I appreciate a lot of different types of vehicles, and I would like to have a choice in what I buy. And I think not giving your consumers that choice is problematic. I think that's the biggest takeaway, especially because it's in the pursuit of just pure profit. Now,
Yeah.
am I saying, hey, companies shouldn't make money? No, they should definitely make money. But I think it's wrong-headed to think that you can only make money one way.
You know
That's what I'm trying to boil it down to, is that by making high profit margin items and forcing them down people's throats, that's a uncomfortable way of making money.
I don't agree with the forcing it down people's throats, because you say you want a choice. You still have a choice. You don't have to buy a Ford.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Ford, if you want to buy a Ford, the only way Ford is trying to make money is by forcing it down people's throats.
And objectively, you're right. But on the other hand,
From my perspective, like, I could go buy something else. But that person who really wants to buy a Ford, they very well may buy a car they do not like as much, because that's the only thing Ford has available. And that's what makes me feel kind of uncomfortable and weird about the whole thing, is like, you should offer a range of choices to your customer that range from inexpensive to pricey and lots of different body styles. And I think a lot of companies do that. The fact that Ford is blatantly saying, we are only in this for ourselves, not to offer anything worthwhile to our customers, is what makes me kind of weird about it.
well, to bring it,
It depends on what you define as worthwhile, because according to sales reports across all brands across the entire industry, SUVs are selling way more than cars. So they're making what is selling based on actual data, actual consumer demand.
but remember, here's two things. First thing, to bring it home to you specifically, why this is bad. It's exactly like Chevy taking the Camaro mid-engine, or the Corvette mid-engine, just bam. If you want a Corvette, you only get a mid-engine. But they're not even doing that. You know what I mean? They're still going to offer the C7 in addition to the C8R. But moving forward, another thing to remember is that a lot of what's being reported about the death of the sedan comes from Ford's numbers, because they're the ones who axed their whole car line. Yes, sales of the Accord and the Camry and all other cars are down, but they're down by the single digits. They're not down all that much. You know what I mean? When you see the Toyota commercials, the Camry's still in the front. The RAV4 sells more, yes, and they make more per model, but Ford is the only company who's cynical enough to take all car options away, and now they want to do it to everyone in the world, even though the Fiesta is their best-selling car in the UK. They just want to take that option away to, very cynically, and they're publicly advertising this, make all of the money per the car sold. That's what gets me. It's not necessarily... Yes, it bothers me that they're taking choice away. It bothers me that this is in the exact same vein as loot boxes in video games, in AAA video games. They don't want to make more money per game sold. They want to make all the money with one game sold. And that's exactly what Ford is doing. They don't want to make a little bit more per car. They want to make all of your money from one car.
And I mean, again, you may be trying to be out in front of a trend. I don't know. But, top 10 cars, of 2017, they include every type of thing that has steering wheel and an engine.
Right.
So they also include pickups. Pickups are 1, 2, and 3.
Fleet sales.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then there is the RAV4, the Rogue, and this is not in order. I'm just pulling them out by body style. RAV4, Rogue, CRV. 3 out of 10. And none of them Fords. are the best-selling cars of 2010, of 2017.
That's a really good point.
So there's 6 things that are not sedans. 4 out of 10 are sedans. 3 are pickup trucks. 3 are crossovers. That puts the lie to the fact that it is not still currently something that could be profitable. And I think what you're seeing is something that Andrew brought up, and we were kind of pre-discussing this, is Ford is like false flag crisis acting its own marketing decisions.
They are.
Hey, well, no one's buying our sedans. When was the last time you updated them? They're not buying your crappy cars anymore because they're crappy cars from how many years ago?
I was telling him I got into a Twitter fight, and I did. I got in a Twitter fight with Nick Bunkley, who writes for Automotive News, because he was saying he brought up the sales figures for the Fusion from this was like 2 months ago, from April, and they sold like 2,000 cars, something like that. He's like, and then versus the what's their, I just forgot
Escape?
the name of their, versus the Escape, which sold like 22,000. He's like, I'll bet you they're sure glad now. I'm like, wait, it's 2018. I don't think, we need to accept the fact that the Fusion at that point has been around for 8 years with no more than a facelift. In that same time, there's been 4 generations of Accord, 3.5 generations of Sonata, and the Camry gets redesigned every 18 months on average. They do half years every other year for that car.
Yeah. So, and that's, I think part of it is the effort based on what people think is going on. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have heard the term like bro science.
Yeah.
Where like, it's like, oh, you should totally do this because it's whatever, not backed up by any numbers.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, people are buying a lot of crossovers. It's like, yeah, but they're buying them not always instead of cars. Mm-hmm. They're buying them instead of minivans. They're buying them instead of pickup trucks even. I bought what could be considered, not by the NHTSA that describes, what is definitely a station wagon, according to all the feds, according to the feds, but is definitely a crossover. I bought it in contention with a small pickup truck.
You did.
So my crossover sale, Ford would not have lost a car sale by selling me a crossover. If they had made the Ranger instead, and it was really great, I might have bought that instead. But they're not going to sell me on their crossovers compared to their cars because that's not a comparison I'm making. So I think, the fact that they're not updating stuff, we're not looking at what crossovers are necessarily being purchased instead of, and things like that. I think there's a lot of implications, and going by, causality does not, or correlation does not imply causality. Mm-hmm. It's like these two things are happening at the same time. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're because of each other. I think it's a lot of bro science that Ford just bought into, in my opinion.
So, here's a question then. So they haven't updated the Fusion in 8 years.
8 years.
I think there was one facelift on the Focus.
Yes.
Yes, one small facelift on the Focus, one on the Fiesta. 2 in Europe on each of those.
Do you think they've had this in mind for such a long period of time that they're like, why are we spending money to redesign the cars if we know we're going to phase them out?
Let me put it to you this way, and then I have a question for you specifically related to this. They never redesigned the Taurus. When they brought that car out, it's been out for 10
They brought it back
10 or
after it was
years.
gone for a while.
Uh-huh.
They reintroduced it, and it's been the same ever
They
since.
never redesigned it.
That's what I'm saying, because do you think, in that boardroom, they're like, okay, so we think by 2020, nobody's going to be buying these cars.
I do think that.
So what's the point of redesigning them and spend all the money if we can just phase them out,
especially
10 years from now?
I do, especially when you look at how
do you think that, so they just announced it this year, but, this is probably behind closed doors, been something on their agenda for maybe since 2010. Like, they released this, all right, that's it. This is our last gasp. Hopefully it works.
It's possible because you can't reverse field on a company
That
the
big.
size of Ford that quickly.
Yeah.
And it may just have been based on something as simple as production costs. But to bring this back around, Nick, you just bought a vehicle. You had an SUV, and you went to a truck instead of any of the new Chevy SUVs, instead of any of the Nissan SUVs instead of anything like that.
Well, I did that because the listeners told me to.
Oh, I see how it is.
Listen, but you never even brought an SUV to the table.
I did not.
You love the Trailblazer.
I love the Trailblazer.
Because
They don't make the Trailblazer no
the
more.
same thing that I ran into, when I was looking, I ended up with the Outback because it actually has a fair tow rating, and I'm not even pulling something like I'd never even be thinking of pulling something like the go-kart, although I probably could with that.
I'm sure you could.
3,000.
Tongue weight would be the only consideration.
Right, and then you'd put it over the wheels, it'd be fine in that big box trailer. But so I was looking at maybe pulling a couple motorcycles, maybe pop-up camper. Wasn't looking at towing much, but when you look at things like even Ford's previous Escape, they could have caught me with that vehicle.
But then you get in it.
Well, no, I would say no because it is an actual SUV.
Yes.
Versus all these crossovers that are just high cars. So my wonder is are we reaching again? I'm trying to it's science, statistics stuff. This is really, although not necessarily car related, I really get into this kind of stuff in science in general. Are we reaching just the very rapid part of the curve of an inflection point where it's going to start changing again? Because are we in that final crash down where the number of people switching to crossovers is the highest it's going to be, and then we're going to move on to something else again? Because it started all the way back with like the first CRV and the first RAV4. That's where crossovers really started. It was a long time ago.
It really was.
It was like 20 years ago. And everybody else is moving on. When we talk about changing direction on a company that size, did it still take too long? That's my question.
I don't know.
That would be my. I wish I had a crystal ball. Are we going to start seeing conversions to these quote unquote SUVs flatten out, and kind of then everybody just kind of buys what they buy for a while until the next big thing comes along? You're not going to see a lot of people jumping between segments. I wonder if that's what's coming next. In which case, then Ford's gotten into the game too late.
Yeah.
And
that would be kind of funny.
Wouldn't that be funny?
And
we're only making SUVs. Well, now everybody's buying hatchbacks,
right? Or for example, the people who have had their Fusion when they bought it 4 years ago, and they're getting ready to get a new car, they were like, "Great, well, I'll just buy another one of these when the time expires." And Ford pulls the rug out from underneath them. They actually don't. They didn't 4 years ago, and they still don't want to cross over, and they're going to start losing customers.
I can only hope that they do. In all honesty, I know a lot of people who are brand loyal still.
Yes.
Nick, you're one.
Yeah.
You're brand loyal above everything else, because instead of going to even look at another company's SUVs, although you love your SUV, you bought a different kind of car from the same manufacturer.
No, I looked at other SUVs.
You just didn't like any of them?
I just didn't like any of them.
Didn't like any of them. Okay.
I'm surprised that none of the Toyota
I actually
SUVs made it up on your list.
I spent a lot of time looking at Toyotas. I spent a lot of time looking at Jeeps. But there was, regardless of the brand, there was just no SUV that impressed me that much.
Fair.
So, I gave them a fair look. And then I also had experience in the Colorado from a rental, so I knew I liked it.
True.
Just the way it felt and the way it drove and all those types of things. So.
It is very nice.
Yeah, it was my same.
Very nice.
Slight detour, because why not? At this point,
What the hell?
that's kind of the same way I felt when I was test driving them. I was considering, that was when I was still in the Jeep, but it was relatively new in the car cycle, and fresh in my mind was the 4Runner. And I got in the Tacoma because I was looking for a truck, and I was like, man, this feels a lot like my 4Runner. You have that previous experience, even though it was not directly related. It was a similar platform, and I think it's something that people discount a lot. I think something I've personally experienced as I went car shopping is, for example, I tested the Tiguan. And I didn't like it that much. And it's on the same platform as Jettas?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. It's basically the tall car version of Volkswagen's smaller Passat or Jetta MQB platform cars, and it's like, God, I don't like this because it's not what I would expect from this platform. And I'm wondering if you're like, kind of feeding into what I was talking about before, if you're going to start seeing people who don't make that jump now. People who might have already have. It's like, okay, they've got the family or whatever else that needs to change over. Everybody else in that same age bracket has already made that decision that despite whatever life changes would make you buy an SUV, they haven't. They still have their sedan, still their hatchback, whatever. So I'm curious to see that. That's what I want to pull the crystal ball out for. Is what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just close this out real quick by saying, like I mentioned, Ford wants to spread this cancer to Europe as well. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see if they actually have the stones to go through with it, which it looks like, according to what Mr. Tai Tang is saying here, they're ready to roll out all SUVs in Europe.
It looks like they're gonna.
The Fiesta is their best-selling car in the UK right now. And I pulled up the list of the best-selling cars in every country in Europe for 2017. How many countries do you think had an SUV as their best-selling vehicle?
None.
One.
Us.
In Europe?
In Europe.
No, I'm kidding.
I guess let's call it two. We'll say one Suzuki Vitara for Hungary and two the Nissan Qashqai.
Where is that?
In Ireland. The only reason I'm counting that as a half is because it doesn't ride as high as a SUV here. They're a little lower to the ground. But let's call it two. And I just really hope that Ford knows what they're doing, because no other countries in Europe have an SUV as their number one seller. They're all small hatchbacks. There's a couple sedans, but it's pretty much tip to tail small hatchback. Fiat 500. Golf is like 6 countries.
Did that give you actual numbers, like units sold, or was it just a ranking 1 through 10?
It wasn't even 1 through 10. It was just a list of the countries.
The top.
Yeah.
Because maybe an SUV isn't number 1, but they're like 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9, and those all total up to more than what that one car is.
Yeah, actually, okay. Right here, the Suzuki Vitara sold 5,600 units in Hungary. And
I don't know the population or how many of them can afford to drive or anything like that, so I don't know if that's a good number or not.
It is almost double what the second place model was.
Wow.
2,700 for the Skoda Octavia.
Which is a sedan.
It is, and there is not one for the Qashqai. I'm just trying to think of how else this could be useful here. Really, wow, I'm flipping through all these pictures. There are so many countries have the Golf as their number one selling. So many. Here's Spain with the Seat Leon. So
of course.
That's just a Golf.
A seat?
What's the Slovakia's the Skoda Fabia. That's a Golf. Long story short, I really do think that this is a scum move from Ford. I'm disappointed they decided to go through with it. At this point, they're not even trying to hide the fact that it's all about money. And I think it's disappointing. I also really think that's going to be interesting to see what happens, because if Tristan's right, and I think he very well could be, that they already did this too late, and auto manufacturers are nothing if not wrong all of the time about what people want, this could really screw them.
This should have, they probably should have started this in like 2003.
Yeah. Maybe they should have.
Give it a solid 15 years.
Yeah. They would have had a great run over the last 15 years.
You know what? We'll see. And that's it from me. I will continue to be the head of Ford is a Scumbag Watch. So you can depend on Check Engine Podcast for that coverage.
Ford is a scumbag and Elon Musk is a what?
Dangerously unbalanced.
Okay. So we're going to have those two watches
distinctly
on constant
unstable
updates.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, after wasting all of that time, we have to get to our number 3.
We do. Like I said, luckily we hopefully won't waste all that much more of your time, because, what it comes down to is mine's another one of Tristan's deep thoughts, TM.
No.
Although I think
Listen, we really need a soundboard because we need music.
we do.
We need a cue.
A bit of classical music cue.
Mm-hmm.
So it does juxtapose nicely to the question around Ford offering only cars.
Only SUVs.
Sorry, no cars, only SUVs. So my question is a personal conundrum, something I've been thinking a lot about since we were at the track.
Okay.
Is I find myself really truly liking a lot of different body styles, types, engines, colors, things like that about cars.
As we all do.
Right, and my question is, I think here, like we as Check Engine Podcast, tend to feel that way. We might have our differences, but, we can appreciate everything from, pickup trucks to Skoda Yetis to, which they definitely need to bring that car here.
Yeah, that'd be so great.
To, the GTI, the Golf, the Veloster, it's a huge gamut, and kind of generally where we are out. Like I said, my love of the Outback comes from the fact that it's really just a tallish all-wheel drive station wagon, and it kind of feels like home. I genuinely don't enjoy crossovers, CUV, SUV, whatever we want to call them. It's generally kind of across the board. We're out on those, but we tend to like a lot of cars, and my question about that is how widespread do you guys think that is in what we've had a lot of discussions about in the past, car culture. We've had a lot of discussions about how we try to be different than the car culture that went before us, to a certain extent. And the question that I'm posing in my deep thought is, how different are we in at least that aspect?
I think it's really hard to say because there was a...
That's why it's a deep thought.
Yeah,
right.
But there's a one-off line that I threw out in my thing about SUVs. I think it was. Maybe it was the... I think it was the thing about the SUVs. Maybe the car show one. Where I made a joke about the guy who measures the engine in his Durango in cubic inches.
Yes.
They actually do measure the engine in the Durango in cubic inches. Dodge does this.
Yes.
It's it says the 392 on the side for some goddamn reason.
Which is weird because they've made a huge marketing push for the rest of their big motors to be liters. 5.7 liter, 6.7 liter Hemis.
But here's the thing. That's exactly where I'm going with this. There is a tight grip on nostalgia in car culture.
Yes.
In any culture right now, to be honest.
That you're very right.
Yeah, everything from music to TV shows.
It's poison. I mean, to be clear, I think it's poison because it makes a lot of things worse.
I'm sick of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Stifles innovation. Also.
Exactly. And it's, it's the BuzzFeed, can you believe it's been 35 years since Saved by the Bell? Yeah, because I'm 90 now. And
Because I'm 1,000 years old, and that show looks like it's 1,000 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to go back to the car for a second, there's a very specific reason why, exactly like you pointed out, Dodge markets everything in their performance cars, quote unquote, in liters, and they do the Durango engine in cubic inches because there's something about that car, and it absolutely is that thing that comes from the Mr. Regular review of the Dodge Ram, where he points out that truck was one of the first that put masculine styling in giant quotes before the actual performance of the truck. It looked like it could tow a lot. It didn't actually tow that much. And that's exactly what Dodge exploits by doing something like numbering their engine for the Durango in cubic inches. They're appealing to the old crowd who don't want to buy those old sports cars, but only ever think about those old sports cars. So to answer your question, I think we're very different, but I don't know that we're actually helpfully different from the previous generation, how we look at old cars, because as Nick pointed out, most of what our generation does is look back at what other generations liked and said, oh yes, I also remember when that was cool to like. You know what I mean?
True. Yep. And I think kind of where I was going with that is, I think, does that, whether it's helpful or not, my question is how in the statistical more kind of verbiage of it, how significant is that difference? Where, for example, previous generations seemed to be, if I talk about the cars that, my dad was always looking after, it's these, big, for the most part, two-door American cars. His preference mostly Chrysler, things like that, Chrysler, Dodge, a lot of generations seem to be fixated on one type of car,
Sure.
and we as I think a younger generation of car culture will not even begrudgingly you'll see the guys that show up at Road America in their muscle car, and they'll walk past. Like we saw the 918 Spider.
Yes.
They'll they'll walk past it and go, I guess that's pretty cool, and they're kind of begrudging about it, whereas we can actually, without fronting or pretending, actually appreciate everything from a Elantra GT Sport to a 918 Spider, to the Senna we talked about in the last episode, to, for example, we were talking about the Dodge truck. If I would ever buy a truck, it'd probably be a Dodge truck, because I appreciate a pickup truck for being more than just a conveyance to tow and haul stuff.
Right.
Dodge made an effort to make that, realizing that often people buy it as a daily driver. They said, okay, how many of you are actually pushing this thing to the limit?
None.
Not very many. So they introduced air suspension, independent rear, stuff that's going to make it a better vehicle to drive at the cost of that performance. I also appreciate, wow, that 3500 Silverado just towed the Titanic, and and I think
Good thing I own one.
right, so I think that,
in case there's any other Titanics
Right,
that need towing.
I think
I'm also going to get my tow weight to the track.
but I think something that we've also touched on as another facet of this in the past is with a few exceptions, there's
a long stare at me right
there was there's
a pregnant pause.
there's not a lot of strict brand loyalty.
Oh, I see where he's going.
I think there's a lot of interest, for example, yourself, Andrew. You're currently interested in Hyundai, but that's not to say that you wouldn't buy anything else.
I considered everything else.
Right. I mean, it's and that was the one that you settled on. I consider myself kind of a joiner. I've happened into a lot of strong, obsessive cultures. I've gotten Volkswagen, Jeep, and Subaru.
Next up, BMW.
Right? Never. But
Here comes the boat shoes.
the boat shoes and the black performance fleece.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, with a polo underneath.
And
Double
the coffee
collar.
mug.
Double collars. But, I've happened into a lot of these very strong car cultures, but I've happened onto 3 of them in only 30 years. I feel like, and my next car...
I would say less than 30 years, because when did car culture really hit you?
Well, when did it have any bearing on things that I purchased?
Middle school?
Or
things you wanted.
Right, like things I wanted, or even things that I went out and bought. It was only the last less than 10 years probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I'm already, whenever I get my next car, it is already a consideration to not purchase a Subaru. I'm already looking at hey, what else is out here? Because I really like that, but I kind of want to sample everything to a certain extent.
You want to play the field before you settle down?
Yeah, right. But I feel like, Nick, you've driven, and I would say had some good stories with and enjoyed everything from the Silver Bullet to the Tahoe to your truck to the Trailblazer. You've kind of trended towards SUVs, but you've driven a lot of stuff and you've enjoyed it and you appreciate, just because you choose to buy one thing doesn't mean you look at it and go, oh, why would anybody buy a whatever, a small car, like you really enjoyed, even in its limp home state, driving my dad's GTI to the garage. You're like, oh, I really wish I could have driven that. It wasn't like you got in,
Yeah, I wish I would have driven that and been able to go more than 20 miles an hour.
As opposed to
would've been great.
Like I know some even younger people too, but mostly older people who is like, oh, why would you drive that little piece of crap? Like they're used to their big American car, or they drive a pickup truck, and everything else is insufficient for their, I wouldn't even say, gender. It's not even all men.
I think a lot of that too is just our generation as a whole is open-minded to a lot of different stuff. Like you hear about like somebody's dad or uncle or grandpa who every day after work for 30 years on the way home they stopped at the same Dairy Queen and ordered the same thing.
Oh, and my grandpa.
Or
really?
Or yeah, that's
Basically.
where we heard the story from. Or people ate at the same restaurant every Friday fish fry. We're going to this restaurant and we're going to sit at this table and we're going to. So when it comes to buying the car, well, we've had the Lincoln, so we're going to get another Lincoln, and then when that Lincoln quits, we're going to get another Lincoln. Whereas
it's already planned out.
It's all pre-planned out. Whereas our generation is kind of like, well, yeah, that was nice, but that over there looks really cool too. Why don't we give that a shot and see what happens?
Yeah.
I guess not by chance. I've been pretty brand loyal, but even within that one, I mean, the Bullet wasn't a Chevy. That was a Chrysler, but very different things.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Massive SUV to smaller SUV to now a pickup truck. And then driving, when I had the chance, my parents' General Motors products too. Like from my dad's 69 Corvette to my mom's Cadillac, CTS to, like, you find something
Your
enjoyable.
mom's Monte Carlo?
My mom's Monte Carlo. I learned it.
Monte Carlo?
The two-door Monte, man.
Wow. The front-wheel drive one?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It was 2000. That's what I got.
Sadly, she did not have it in the Intimidator trim.
I was going to say, don't worry, it only looked fast.
That's right. That's why I was able to get my driver's license in it. She wasn't going to give me anything faster to go get my license. I barely passed that test as it was.
Me too.
But, no, you and I think we kind of touched on this before, whether it be on a blog or in one of our episodes. This generation is more of a fan of a certain style of vehicle than a certain brand. Mm-hmm. Like, person X is really into hatchbacks. Is it a Ford hatchback? Is it a Hyundai hatchback? Is it
It's not a Ford hatchback.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. But you get what I'm saying. Like, the brand who makes the hatchback doesn't matter. They just really like that style of car. So that's where they start. This person over here, person Y, is really into pickups. Is it a Toyota? Is it a Nissan? Is it a Chevy? Is it a Ford? Well, that depends. Who's got the best one right now when I'm going to buy. I just know I want a pickup. That's kind of where this car culture is at. And I think, and we don't make it a rivalry. Like, I've had General Motor products within my family, as literally since before I was born. I don't hate Ford just because we drive Chevy.
I do.
Yeah, but you hate everything,
and B, you have a reason
B,
this
you
time.
You have a reason to hate Ford.
So here's
but
a question.
But it's not
No,
it's not blind hatred because of
the oval. You don't see the
right.
oval
The other
and just
brand.
see red for no reason.
It's not like, in football, the Alabama-Auburn thing, when just because Alabama, you hate Auburn just by default, or like high school where I went, Oconomowoc, we hate Watertown.
Yep.
Just hate them. Because
you gotta hate one.
You have to.
Arrowhead.
That's a really good point.
Yep.
They beat us every year.
Every year.
I meet people and it's like, oh, you went to Oconomowoc? I went to Watertown. I still go, and I graduated over 10 years ago.
But I think that's what I'm going for is, in general, I think you still have a certain subset of us younger people that are still going to be, met and surpassed by the generation behind us as far as open-mindedness goes, especially.
Oh, sure.
But I think is our generation of car culture the first one where it's really viable to, you can all be friends even though you drive different cars. I feel like back in the day, even right,
Case in
right,
point,
right. I'm
this
saying,
table.
right. I'm saying,
Yeah.
but are we part of a larger thing in car culture? Which I think we are. Your younger people are more open to your car can be good. Doesn't mean that my car isn't good. And can we all enjoy what each car does well, appreciate them, and not just like hate on them for no reason.
Maybe. I'll answer it with
Unless
this.
it's Tesla.
I wasn't gonna say Tesla, but that's a better thing than what I was gonna say. No, I'm not gonna say Tesla because clearly in the case of Tesla, it's the tribal us against the world mentality bolstered by a CEO who's insane.
Right, I think that comes from the other side, where, for example, when we were at Mid Ohio, we saw the Tesla with the license plate LOL oil,
Yeah.
and my initial reaction was, he's making fun of me. I hate him.
I just hate it because he drove a Tesla. I mean,
Well, but what I'm saying,
it's
but
whatever.
I think that contributes. Versus like, occasionally you'll see some backwards person with, the Calvin peeing on a Chevy logo stuck to the back of their Ford or
Usually
whatever.
old though.
They're older, maybe even than us, but not necessarily always by that much. So there are still some, holdouts in that. But I would say in general, you don't see a lot of that anymore among younger people.
Here's
Right.
Now that's I think it's interesting. That was
here's
my
what I was going to point
interesting point.
out. As a counter to all of that, and maybe it goes back to our generation's needless nostalgia for things that we don't actually remember because we weren't there for. The BRZ, or whatever the hell it's called now, because it's not called the BRZ anymore. The 86, Toyota 86.
Yeah, it's Subaru BRZ.
Yeah.
Was that the Subaru?
It's not the
FRS.
Scion FRS. Yeah.
Whatever, they're all the same car. The 86. That car, when it came out, and even now, definitely stoked the fires of rear drive, best drive, front engine, best engine, two-door, best door. And that is something that our generation can't necessarily have a fondness for because when our generation was young...
It was front-wheel drive, 4 doors, best doors, drives, etc.
Right, and
Almost
there
everybody.
were exactly all of none cars on the market that had that, with the exception of the Ford Mustang and the Corvette. Because did they make Camaros? Yeah, the Camaro came
Some
and
of
went.
them.
Yeah,
Firebirds.
Firebirds.
Yeah, there were a couple, performance cars, but there isn't a standard for that in our generation.
Right.
But when that car came out, and continuing now, there are only two kinds of people who try to race me when I drive my car. The first is everybody in a WRX. Mm-hmm. The second, everybody in a BRZ.
Maybe it's just Subaru owners.
Yeah.
Or, any of them.
I know,
The
I'm
FRS,
kidding,
the
I'm
blah,
kidding.
Blah, blah, blah. And some people in Jukes. as a
Side note.
Yeah, as a third one. But really, and I think that possibly you could be onto something when you say Subaru owners, because if there's a tribal group,
Yeah.
it's people who drive WRXs.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also, some nostalgia does play into this. So when, for example, I drive my car onto at the track, no one gives a shit about it because it's not. First of all, it's nothing that special. But second of all, it's not something that people have been told is desirable. And I think that plays into a lot of what you see in what people look for or think is cool and not in other people's cars. It's what they've been told is cool instead of forming their own opinion. People who form their own opinion are far more open to looking at everything else because that's how they got their own opinion. They formed it.
Yeah, and I think probably what we're seeing is a kind of a slider, a continuum along which people exist, and that's changing over time.
Yeah.
Where, it used to be, my family bought these, I'm going to buy these, everything from brand to body style. And now, because they were told, hey, you need to like these.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a lot of ways, like, so I think our parents, although this is not a universal, I think a lot like people who are our parents' age are kind of were the first to be like we talk about like internet natives, where like they like we grew up with technology around.
Yeah.
But people like my dad, they made the decision to jump on that wave. I think a lot of people their age are also a lot of them made that choice to jump on the don't beat your impressions into your children.
Sure.
I think they will definitely say, like, for example, I had Audis around forever, and by that, yes, a certain love for that brand. I like sedans, I like hatchbacks. That rubbed off because I was around them all the time. But when I went off the first time and bought my 4Runner, other than my dad had some complaints about it smelled musty in there, he was like, this is actually pretty cool. Like he went out of his way to say, like, I don't disapprove of this choice you've made. I think it's actually pretty cool.
All you ever want to hear a dad say, right?
Right?
I don't disapprove, son.
Right. And I think that's because I think a lot of people in their generation have made the decision to do that where they haven't before. And again, there are exceptions. That's there's exception to every and any rule, and that's why we still see it occasionally where every once in a while an Australian breaks out, where that's what I call when Ford people start beating up on GM people or vice versa.
Right.
Because
Australian.
yeah, occasionally that fight begins, mainly instigated by older people and then supported by younger people because they feel they have to side with their parents.
Right.
But I think in general, we can appreciate a vehicle strictly on its merits more freely, even if people wanted to
Blind
before.
to the brand.
Yeah, I think we're able to do that more freely than generations before us. Is kind of where my deep thought is coming from.
What if we all just took the badges off our cars? Just drove badgeless cars?
You'd still know.
Well, car people would.
No. I think that would be an interesting exercise, not only because it's one of those like meta narratives about brand versus appearance, but brands do spend an inordinate amount of money and time thinking of design languages, quote unquote.
Yes.
And many of them do it successfully. So I think it would be interesting because even when I'm at work, for some reason, I've had my car for almost a year now, and at this point, people are saying, "Did you get a new car?" Like, sorta. But
people just don't notice you.
That I am very happy about. But everyone always asks me what it is, and then I always say Hyundai, and they're like, "Oh, that's a Hyundai?" I'm like, "Yes, that's a."
Always has been. It was the last time you asked, also.
Still was, and yes, it still has the red interior. But I don't know.
Dope, by the way.
No, thank you. I do think that there is something to be said for people in previous generations, and generally that's where they are, still doing that you drive a foreign car thing, regardless of the fact that their car was almost certainly made in Mexico, and if you drive a Toyota, it was probably made here.
Yes.
Whatever. Let's not let facts get in the way.
No one ever does.
But, I think it's an interesting question. I definitely don't have an answer. Because I'm more cynical, tend to think that no, we're not. We're just hiding it. But, we're not better. We're just pretending. But I could be wrong.
No, I think we're better. Just because we're better about a lot of things, and that's just how life works. Like, people get better at stuff. They form certain opinions about things different from the people before them, and then everyone's like, "Oh yeah, it is better."
Well, those opinions aren't actually so bad.
That
Yeah,
does make it easier.
Yes, but that does make it easier. That's advancement in anything.
True.
In technology, and just thought, in social situations, like, we're and our kids are going to be better at it than us too. I mean, it's just.
I hope so.
Yeah.
The other part is you don't have 10 million people across the country working in Ford's lead paint factory. So if you don't work for them, you're not likely to gravitate towards a brand. I don't think.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still people who work for all the brands, right? So.
Right, but it's we don't manufacture cars here like we used to.
I always wonder, like, if you work in one of those plants, like, I always think of the one, like, going down to Indianapolis, you see the Subaru plant.
Yep.
Like, you roll up there in a big Chevy diesel. Like, do you feel a little bit awkward? Like, I'm going to work for Subaru, and I'm driving this 3500 diesel Chevy from
Someone might report to HR for that.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
I really have no idea.
Nick's not so deep thought.
Yeah.
Significantly less deep. I think it's an interesting question. We, like so many other things, we're going to have to watch because, did anyone go to a car show this summer? Anybody? I didn't.
I went to the one at work.
You went to the one at work. Did you go to the one?
I was not. I was out of state when the one at work was going on, so I did not go.
That's
Which-
3 no's.
Well, yes and no. Because I think that was an interesting window into possibly partially answering my own question. I hadn't thought about it, that maybe that had been also part of what had been making me consider that, because that had, in that show, that had everything from the, things you'd expect at a car show, as you went into detail on your blog,
Yes.
to an FRS, not a BRZ, an actual Scion one, a Alfa Romeo Giulia, Giulia,
Giulia.
and to the real life version of the Cam Master from regular car reviews.
Uh-huh.
A Buick Roadmaster with a big block shoved in the front. It's hilarious. To a guy's moderately warmed over GTI. To full rally replica WRX, like mud flaps and everything else.
all the lights.
Hello lights, bro.
To I think
The brand.
there was a lot of stuff there, and the distribution of where people were stopping, I think, was interesting to look at. The younger people were not all clustered around the WRX or the GTI. We were all kind of continuously wandering from place to place, appreciating each car separately for what it was, or in some cases was not.
Was not.
I think that is at least part of it. I think that gives me hope that my answer to the question I posed is that yes, I agree with Nick. I think we're going to see this change continue, and I hope it does. And the car show at work gave me some hope in that regard.
Why can't we all just get along, man? Just love
Getting
each
along
other.
is stupid.
And on that cheerful note,
You ruined my moment, man.
Of course, I trampled all
You
over.
just refused to be cool about this.
hey, for once it wasn't me.
I was going to end by saying, can you guys believe the 1998 Ford Mustang is 20 years old?
Oh God.
Clickbait.
That's right. This is
We
it
already
now.
did that episode.
That's okay. People in Hollywood already did stuff and they reboot it.
Yeah, I'm rebooting it right
We can
now.
Reboot the clickbait episode.
Oh God.
Nostalgia, man. Member berries. All them member berries.
We've been here for too long. Get me out of here.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. So, folks, be sure to find us on social. We're on Facebook at Check Engine Podcast. Like us. If you don't like us, that's cool. We get it. You might know someone who like us, so please share us. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. On both of those sites, we're at Check Engine Pod. There's no cast on the end. We do have our own website, checkenginepodcast.com. You can get links to all of our episodes. We do blog a blog or two every now and again. You can find those there. Find out a little more info. Some of it may or may not be embellished about our hosts. And
Adornment.
it also provides a link to anchor.fm/checkenginepodcast, which is our home base where all of the streaming occurs. You can listen to us on Google Play. You can listen to us on iTunes. You can listen to us on Spotify. That's still for real. We're still not lying to you about that.
That's right.
It's real again.
It is still real. As well as places like Overcast, Breaker.audio, CastBox, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. So thank you to all of those folks for streaming us. Thank you to all of you for listening. Do you guys have any thank yous before we take off today?
Oh, man, on the spot. I want to wait, by the time this comes out, I want to say thank you to Veloce and to Josh Balicki for probably being the greatest thing that's ever happened to this podcast. Almost certainly.
Probably. We'll see if we have to eat those words.
I was
But
say, what do you mean probably?
Listen, I'm just, I'm getting the positive vibes out there.
Up until this point.
You know me, I'm all about positivity.
No, you're not.
uh-huh.
That is a lie.
Yeah.
Tristan, any thank yous?
Yes, I would like to thank the free motor racing ticket business. Be that either provided by some randos at Andrew's church, or the
Shout out to Barb and Allen.
one of the first chances I'm going to have to do this. The preferred post-race restaurant of the Check Engine podcast, PJ Campbell's at the Depot in Plymouth, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They have provided free tickets for us in the past and will hopefully continue to do so in the future. This is one of our first advertising segments. So thank you to PJ Campbell's at the Depot. Fantastic food, especially the German food. And hey, for us it comes with free race tickets.
That's what you need. And they have great, the big-ass pretzel.
Yeah, and chicken schnitzel.
Oh. It is seriously good food.
Yeah, seriously good food and a very good friend of the podcast.
Man, who am I thanking? I just want to thank all those listeners for bearing with us. This is a weird episode. Weird two-part episode.
It turned into a two-parter, which is the weirdest part.
It really did.
But
I can't wait to listen back and be like,
man, this was not our best
no,
effort.
I think this is going to be good. I really do.
No, this was fine. I like the show and tells because it does kind of open it up to just random conversation, and it doesn't necessarily go off the rails, but we're leaning pretty heavy.
It gives us the freedom to do what a lot of our listeners, I think not maybe everybody, but I know several that listen for the conversation. They may not be huge car people, so thank you for bothering to try listening to a car podcast, and thank you for giving us feedback that sometimes you just like to hear the funny stuff we have to say, so I appreciate that. Another thank you.
Yeah, just thank you all around. Thanks for listening. Even if we suck, you guys are awesome. So we cannot wait to hear from you. Please comment. Let us know what you think. And we cannot wait to talk to you yet again. So take it easy. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.